Welcome back, my fellow creators. Today, we're diving deep into the powerful world of shape layers in Adobe After Effects. Shape layers are an essential component of After Effects, enabling us to bring our creative visions to life with stunning motion graphics, animations, and visual effects. But what exactly are shape layers? Well, in a nutshell, shape layers are versatile, vector-based layers within After Effects. Now, why are shape layers so important? The beauty of shape layers lies in their flexibility and endless creative possibilities. With shape layers, you can have precise control over every aspect of your design. You can customize their properties, such as fill and stroke, to define their color, style, and outlines of your shapes. Additionally, the transform properties like position, scale, rotation, and opacity allow you to create captivating animations that bring your designs to life. Shape layers also offer the advantage of being resolution independent. As vector-based layers, they can be scaled up or down without any loss in quality, making them perfect for projects destined for various output sizes, from small screens to large displays. Moreover, shape layers provide an extensive range of creative options. You can create complex shapes by manipulating path points and Bezier handles, giving you the freedom to design unique and intricate visuals. Additionally, by leveraging shape layers operators, you can easily duplicate, combine, or modify multiple shape layers to achieve stunning effects and animations. In summary, shape layers are the backbones of After Effects, empowering you to unleash your creativity and craft captivating motion graphics. Their versatility, control properties, scalability, and the ability to create intricate designs make them indispensable tools for any motion graphic artist. So, let's roll up our sleeves and dive deeper into the world of shape layers. Here in After Effects, I already have a project that I created and saved with the name of Shape Layers. Let's go ahead and create a new composition. Control or Command N. I will leave the defaults, which are 1920 by 1080, and I'm just going to name it Shape Layers 1. Click OK. And now I'm going to create a solid. The shortcut for that is Control or Command Y. And the color doesn't really matter. I'll just click OK. Now, this is what I want to show you. If the layer is selected, and then you use one of these shape tools, like the rectangle tool, rounded rectangle, or something like that, to create the shape, you are not creating the shape at all. You are creating a mask. So I'm going to undo that. So if you want to create a shape layer, make sure that there are no layers selected, and then create your shape. And this is a shape layer. And you know it's a shape layer because it says shape layer right here in the timeline. So I'm going to delete both of these layers. And because I have no layers are selected. So anything I do will create a shape layer here, right? So I can use the pen tool, I can use any of these tools, any of this. All right, so I'm just going to click and drag to create my shape layer. Now, one of the first things that I want to tell you is that if you go to the Preferences, and that's under Edit, Preferences, General, or if you are on the Mac, click on After Effects Preferences, General, and you're going to see that under the General Preferences, you will have the opportunity to automatically center the anchor point on that shape layer, and that is this preference right here. See where it says Center Anchor Point in New Shape Layers? You could select that or not. Now, I'm not going to select it for now. I'm just going to click OK. And if I select this layer, this anchor point is not quite centered. In fact, I'm even going to move it even more so that it becomes really apparent what I'm going to be doing. Look where the anchor point is. It's right here on the top left. If I want to center this, I can select my selection tool. So just click on this arrow or press the letter V as in Victor. Press and hold Control, which is Command on the Mac, and then double click the pan behind or anchor point tool, and boom, now the anchor point is centered on the shape layer. Ain't that cool? All right, so this shape layer, if we select it and have one of the shape tools selected, you're going to see things like fill, stroke, add, Bezier path, all of those things, right? So let's just start very, very, very simple. If you already have the shape layer created and you don't want a fill, select it, in other words, click on it, go to fill, click on the word fill, and then select this little icon here, and there you go, the fill disappears. You can also have a fill that is a solid. You can have it as a linear gradient, and you can have it as a radial gradient. Now, solid is pretty easy. You can change the blending modes, you can change the opacity, you can preview it or not. I'm just gonna click OK. If I don't want it red, maybe I want it blue, I want it green, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Remember, this is a solid. I can then click on this color swatch, and I can change the color to whatever. Like I want blue, I want, well, that's more cyan than anything, right? I want it more blue, I want it green, I want it yellow. It doesn't matter, I can change it here. If I want it gradient, I can click on the word fill, and now I can choose the radial gradient, for example, and I can click OK. Now I can click on the color swatch, and I can change my gradient. Right now, and the default is to have it going from white to black, and you see it right here. If I wanted to go, say, from red to black, I can select this color stop here, change this to red, and notice how it changes here. Now, if I want to change the black, I just select this here, and I change it to green, right? I can also change where these things do the gradient to by changing this middle button here. If I want to change the opacity, right, I can change this by selecting this and then changing the opacity down. And in fact, let me go ahead and click OK, and I'm going to change to the grid so that you can see the transparency a little bit better. I'm going to click on the swatch again, and there you go. See how the opacity is now 41%? I can also change the location of where this color stop for opacity is. See, I can scrub the number, or I can simply click and drag it. The same with the red. I can simply click and drag it, right? So if I want it to be back to solid, I select it, change this to 100. I can select the green, change the location, the opacity, whatever. It's pretty self-explanatory. I can also add more color stops. Like if I click on this bottom part here, right? See how that's red, but it doesn't have to be. Maybe, okay, I'll have you be blue, I'll have you be yellow, I'll have you be, I don't know, magenta, whatever it is. And you can see those colors in here, and you can change the location, you can change all of that. All right? It's the same if you click back on the fill and you go to a radial gradient. Do you see how the colors are now represented here in the circle? All right, so before I go on and tell you about the stroke, which is going to be very similar to the fill, let me just show you this. If I switch to my selection tool, do you see, it's very faint, but you can see it. It's like a little center with a line with a little lollipop looking thing. This actually changes where the gradient starts and ends. So you can click on it here, you can start it, say here, end it here, or whatever. It's whatever you want it to be. But this is the thing. If you deselect that tool, right, you don't see it, and you go back to the selection tool, do you see how it's not there anymore? It's just not there. That's one of those things that you can always get from the timeline. You see how there's a start point here? As soon as you click here, and by the way, I didn't open this, it got opened automatically, right? So you see, and you can even keyframe it. So these beginning points and out points, they can all move. How cool is that? Like, I'm going to start the start point here. Let me keyframe it. I'm going to move it to here, keyframe it. I'm going to move it to here, in here, blah, blah, blah. And then I can go to the end point. It can end there. And now I'm going to go backwards and have it here, and have it here, and have it, hey, on the other side of the universe. And let's start you right here. Look at the animation that we're getting now. I'm going to get rid of the transparency grid and look at the animation. So our gradient is animating. Our shape layer is not, but the gradient is, only because we did some simple keyframes in here. All right? So I'm just going to get rid of this. Look at the highlight lengths. You can change that, the highlight angle, the colors, the opacity. All of those things you can edit here in the timeline. And if you click on the words Edit Gradient, then the same gradient editor panel that we saw before appears. So I'm just going to cancel out of this. So that's for the fill. If you click on the word stroke, notice that you have the same choices. You have no stroke, solid, a linear gradient, radial gradient, and all of that good stuff. So, you can change the blending modes here to whatever, and you can preview it or not. You can change the opacity or not. I'm just going to click OK because I want for the stroke to be a little bit bigger so that we can see it, right? Now, if I click on the color swatch for the stroke, then I can change the color. I can change a whole bunch of things. But look in the timeline, I can change even more. So I'm going to collapse the gradient fill, and I'm just going to go here. Look, color, opacity, stroke width. Look at this, line cap. So this we won't be able to see because we don't have a line. So let me go ahead and delete the shape layer, and I'm just going to have a line. All right, so it's going to have a, red, well, no, let me change it to white so they can see it a little bit better. Look at the path. It starts right here and it ends right here. Let me make this even wider so that you can see it. Right, so if I go to stroke here, look at the butt cap, round cap. See where the path ends and see how it just protrudes out from there and it gives you a roundness. Look at this projecting cap. So what's the difference between projecting cap and butt cap? Where it is, where it is. So see how this ends with the path and this projects out. So how much does it project? Well, how big is your stroke? Is that much? See it? So not too bad. Going on, and again, this is for, not for fills, but for strokes. Look what happens with the dashes. I can click on this little plus sign and add a dash, and nothing happens. I can change the dashes to more or less, see them? I can also change their offset, and look, you can animate this. And by the way, this doesn't just work when it's stroke only. This will work if it were a stroke and a fill. So let me just go ahead and make sure that I draw something with a stroke and a fill. This is what we had before. So, I'm just going to go here to rectangle, and we're talking about stroke. So I'm going to expand stroke, and we already talked about the cap. Let me go ahead and add the dashes. I'll go back to the line join in just a little bit. Look at this. I can change the amount of the dash, and I can animate the dash. I can even add more dashes. I can add dashes. I can add gaps. Look at this. The big dash, a big gap, a little gap, right? And it can animate. I can add more dash, gap, dash, gap, dash, gap. I keep on adding them, right? So I can just simply animate them like yay. Now I'm going to get rid of all of these dashes and gaps only because I want to go back. In fact, you know what? Let me delete the whole layer and draw it again. And I want to go back to the stroke here. and to the line join. Right now, it's on miter join, but look, it can be round join. Do you see how now it gives me like these little roundness corners? I can also change it to bevel. And of course, I can taper it. You can change the start length. You can change the end length. Look at that. The start width, the end width, the start ease, so that it's a little bit more curvy. Before it was like a straight line, and now this is giving me a little curvy thingy. Let me exaggerate these. Beginning and end. So start 0, end 100. And then if you go with the ease, it just gives you a little bit more roundy thing here. You can also wave it. Look at this, amount of wave, units, wavelength, animation, and of course face. You're getting sleepy, you're getting sleepy. I'm just joking. Alrighty, so you can do all of these cool things with a stroke, and of course the stroke can also be a gradient, a linear gradient, a radial gradient, and you can change these to however you want. And don't forget that with the gradient, you can change where it starts and where it ends. So that is the start point. Let's move it to here. This is the end point. And if you actually want to see the visual representation, select the selection tool. So click on the selection tool, and then you'll see these little dots here. And if you don't see them, then make sure that you click on one of these properties, and then you will see them. All right. So you can have some really cool gradients, some really cool strokes to your shape layers. The imagination really is your only limit. Now, there are other ways of creating shape layers, and I'm going to go back to some of these operators and all of that. But if I wanted to, say, import an Illustrator file, let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to import, say, the doggy. And I'm just going to choose merged layers, so that's all good. And I'm going to put doggy in the timeline. I can right-click doggy. I can go to create and then create shapes from vector layer. And now all of that doggy, I'm just going to delete the original one, is a shape layer with all of these contents. With all of these contents, which I can make visible, invisible. See, that was that little pupil of the eye. All of these, see, that's that leg. And all of the operators, everything that I can do with a shape layer, I can now do with these shape layers because I turned that Illustrator file into a shape layer. How cool is that? So that's one way. Anything vector like that can be turned into a shape layer. I'm going to delete the doggy. I deleted it from the project panel already. Now I'm just going to type something. It doesn't really matter what. So something, whatever. And now I'm just going to put it here in the middle. I can right-click that text layer and I can go create shapes from text. And it's the same thing. Now I have a shape layer. Notice how the original one becomes invisible, right? So After Effects does this in case you want to go back. I don't need to go back, so I'm going to delete the text layer. But look, all of the contents, each and every layer is its own shape. And that is really cool. So you have different ways of creating shape layers. All right, so here we go. Let's talk more about shape layers, right? I'm simply going to create this one, and there it is. I'm going to reduce the stroke quite a bit because, quite frankly, it's annoying me. And you know what? I think I'm also going to go back to a solid fill, and yellow is fine. I can click and drag to create another one, click and drag to create another one, click and drag to create another one. I can switch tools. I can create one here and all of that jazz. And notice that every time I create one, the new one gets created like yay. And I can now change these colors. So for example, I can go to that individual layer and change it. I'm going to select this one right here and change that color to a green. I'm just doing this so that you see that the stacking order matters. So do you see how this is the red shape? If I put it at the bottom, see how it goes to the bottom? I can also change the blending modes, right? So I'm going to select this top one, and I'm going to change the blending mode to say soft light. See it right here? I mean, that is a different composite, right? So don't forget to experiment with these things, because you can create really some cool things. And you can also create them in Illustrator and then bring them back. Although, you know, many things might not come through. If you do create it in Illustrator and some things don't come through, there are some ways around it. Let me just give you one example. If I bring the logo, right, and I'm going to merge all the layers and I put it here. Do you see how the logo just says authentic drones, etc., etc.? If I right-click this and then go to create, convert shapes, you know, see how the text disappears? Well, this is why. If I edit original, so select the logo here and then go edit, edit original, it should open in Illustrator, and it does. And what you need to do is you need to not have those as text layers. Yes, you can bring them into other Adobe apps and, you know, then do the conversion there. But the easiest thing is to just open this in Illustrator and make sure that your text layer is not text layer. In other words, it's not editable text. So here in Illustrator, you can select that layer. See it right here, authentic drones, blah, blah, blah. And now go to Object, Expand. Expand Objects, Expand Fill. And there you go. This is no longer a text layer. I'm going to do a Save As. And I'm going to save it as Logo 1, right? Now, back into After Effects, let me just go ahead and delete the logo because I don't need it. Delete all of that. You know what? I'm gonna just delete everything. And now I'll import logo 1. And yeah, I can merge the layers and all of that. So shapes 2. Just going to put this down, right click, create shapes from vector layer. Boom, there is the text, right? So there is ways around it when things don't quite come through from Illustrator. You know, all you have to do is a little experimenting, right? All right, so here we go. Let's go ahead and talk about other shape layer things, right? So I'm just going to create a rectangle, all right? And now I'm going to go to this rectangle here. We already talked about the stroke and the fill, but we have not talked about the path. Look at the size. I can change that. I can change the position. I can change the roundness, and that can be animated, right? And notice that this says rectangle, all right? This says rectangle. But I want you to notice that if I grab my pen tool and I want to change some of these Bezier points or vertex points, that I won't be able to do it. Well, if I want to do that, I can always right-click this and I can convert it to a Bezier path. And if I convert this to a Bezier path, look at the options that I have here now. They only say path. And yes, I can keyframe it. Now, if I go with my selection tool, I can simply click on any of these paths and move it, except I can't. And that may happen to you. You can click on the word path, and now, look, you are just moving that path. All right, so there's a rectangle path 1, which remained, and it created a new one. See it right there? I can now delete the other one, and I'm going to stay with just this path. Look at this. I am moving the whole thing. What if I just want to select one point? Look at the difference. Do you see how these points are like filled in? Look what happens when I click on the word path. So not on path, so click outside of it. click on the words path 1, do you see how now these vertex points are like empty, transparent? You can now just click on one of them and only that one is selected, and you can now convert it to a curve, to a continuous Bezier, non-continuous Bezier. It doesn't really matter. So you can use these tools, the pen tool, the add vertex tool, the delete, the convert, all of these to just go to that one point, right? You can also use shortcuts. For example, if I want to convert this one too, I can press Control and Alt, which would be Option Command. Do you see how it gives me the upside down V thingy? I am now converting that point. This would be continuous Bezier. If I press and hold Control and Option, I can now break the continuity of those two to get a non-continuous Bezier, and that's true with both of these. So I can start creating very intense or very creative graphics here that communicate exactly what I need to communicate. Notice that everything else is still there, the stroke, the path, the color, opacity, the fill, all of those things are still there. Now, let's go ahead and do this again. So I have a rectangle. I right-click the word rectangle path 1 and now convert to Bezier path. Look how now, if I move just the path, I don't have the other shape next to it. So what you have selected and how you do the convert to Bezier path makes a difference on the behavior of the shape layer. Not only that, but if you want to create it as a path to begin with, you can simply press and hold the Alt key, Option on the Mac, as you draw. And now if you expand this, notice that it simply says path. All right, so let's go to a different tool. So that was the rectangle tool. Look at the rounded rectangle tool. You can click and drag, and it gives you a little roundy there to begin with. You can change the size, the position, and of course, the roundness. You could do that before. But anyway, now let's go to another one. Ellipse, right? If you press and hold Shift as you draw, we all know this. You're constraining to a perfect circle or a perfect square. Look at this. And the path, we only have size and position here. But I gotta make you aware of this. Look at the transform. It has anchor point, position, scale, skew, rotation, and opacity. This has size here, it has scale here, and under transform, there is another scale. This layer has 3 scales, and if I added another shape to this shape layer, it would have 4 or 5 or 6. And they all refer to different things. So whenever you're scaling something, you have to be very aware of what is it that you are scaling. Is it the size of the path? Is it the size of the shape? Is it the scale of the whole shape layer? They all refer to different things, even if you just scale this down and you say, well, it looks the same. And then you go to this one, you go, well, it looks the same. And then you go to this one and you go, it looks the same. They might look the same, but the behavior may change depending on what it is that you're trying to do. So be careful and make sure that you're targeting the transform property that you need to target. Remember, this layer, the simple layer, has 3 different scale properties, and they all refer to different things. All right, so let's go ahead to the next one, which is the polygon tool. This one, and we've seen this before in other videos, that if you leave the mouse button down, you can click and drag, right? You can press the space bar and see how you can move the shape. I'm not moving the anchor point. The anchor point is still in the middle of the screen. I can move this. So, I can release the space bar. And then if I move the mouse, I'm just making this bigger, right? I can rotate it, one way or another. I can also use the up arrow to give it more sides, the down arrow to give it less sides, right? The right arrow to make it more roundy, the left arrow to make it less or more roundy the other way, right? And I can start creating really cool things, right? I'm going to delete this because this is really cool actually with the star tool. If I click and drag and I want for the star to be more pointy, I can press and hold the control key and just drag out. See how only the rays of the star become larger, like the body of the star doesn't? Up arrow, right? And now I'm going to press the left arrow to give it more roundy, like yay. All right? Now I want for the anchor point to be in the middle of the shape itself. So I'm going to switch to my selection tool, press and hold Control or Command, and double click on this tool here. And now my anchor point is right in the middle of the shape layer. Now, if I go to my polystar here in the timeline, look at the path. Points, I can have more or less, yay. Position, rotation, right? Inner radius, outer radius, inner roundness, outer roundness. So those are all the things that I actually did when I was hitting the shortcuts while I was drawing it. I can always change it back here. Now, with that shape layer selected, I'm going to go to one of my shape tools and I'm going to get rid of the stroke. I don't want the stroke. And I want for the fill to be a radial gradient. And I want to edit it so that I only have 2 stops. All right, so I'm going to simply drag the ones that I don't want. The middle stop is going to be orange. Yeah, I like that. And the outer stop is going to be white. All right, I'm going to select the selection tool, and now I can change this to however I want it. And this is exactly what I want. In other words, I just want like this daisy looking flower thing, right? So now that I have that, we can talk about other things here, like how the polystar, you can change all of these things. You can change it or add the stroke, the gradient fill. You can transform the entire layer. You can add another shape layer to another shape to this shape layer. But instead, because we already kind of sort of covered that, let's talk about add. Add. Simply add. And you can see it here to the right of the word contents that there is add. If you click here or if you click here, well, with the layer selected, right? See where it says add? Boom. You can add an empty group that you can use to organize things together, etc., etc. You can add a rectangle, an ellipse, a polystar, a path, right? So let's just go simple. Let's add a rectangle. And you can see it right there. So I added a rectangle. With the rectangle selected, I can now add a fill. See how it adds it to the rectangle? So you can see how it's here at the bottom, the rectangle. I can simply move the rectangle above the polystar and the fill with it, and then you have it right here. Now, do you see how the rectangle and the fill are kind of separate? I can add a group which is empty, right? I can rename it. Remember how to rename things, right? Select them, press enter or return, and then type the new name. I'm going to name this rectangle. I'm going to move this here, and now I can add the rectangle path and the fill to that rectangle, and that way they all travel together. If I want to put it above or below the polystar, whatever, I'm good. All right? I'm just going to go ahead and delete that rectangle because I don't need it. Let's add other things. So with the layer selected, notice that my polystar is not selected, but the layer is. I can add, we already saw gradient fill, gradient stroke. If I add a fill, right, see how it's below. I can say, hey, above, and then everything turns red. And then I can change the opacity or the blending mode, whatever I want, so I can start creating some really cool things. I'm going to delete that. So with that little bit, I just wanted to tell you that it matters what you have selected when you add things. It actually matters, and it matters a lot. So, you know, with the layer selected, let's go ahead and add a merge paths. Use shape layer operators to animate, including merge paths. This operator combines multiple shape paths into a single path, allowing you to create intricate shapes by merging or subtracting paths. If you add a merge paths in here, yeah, you know what, the gradient changed a little bit and all of that, but there is nothing really to worry about. So let me do something different. Let me create a new composition, and I'm going to draw two rectangles, 1 and 2, right? With the layer selected, I can now add a merged paths, and do you see how those paths merge to form only one path? And you can see how out of two separate shapes, we now have one. And you can see it here. In the timeline, you can go to the gradient fill, you can select the gradient fill, you can add a stroke, right? And you can, let me change this color to red, and let me change the stroke width as well. So now they are looking and acting like a single shape inside of this shape layer, and that's because of merge paths. All right, let's go back to the previous one. So with the layer selected, go to add, and now offset paths. And of course, the offset paths operator comes here, and we are going to reduce the amount. And you see how now you can have these kind of look different. You know, you can change the miter limit, the miter join, the copy offset, all of those things you can change in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete the offset paths. And let's go ahead and add. So with the layer selected, add. And by the way, again, I can do it from here. Add, pucker, and bloat. Pucker and bloat operators distort the shape by squeezing or expanding parts of it, giving a unique and organic appearance to the shape layer, right? So with the pucker and bloat added, I can change the amount to like yay. See how much different that looks? Or yay. See how much different that looks. Actually, that looks pretty cool. And now I can go to, not the transform, but the transform of the polystar. And I'm going to change that scale a little bit because I'm digging that. You know, I'm digging that flower. So pucker and bloat, and you can animate it, all of that good stuff, right? Now, again, with the layer selected, you can add, I'm going to use this top one, a repeater. The repeater operator duplicates the original shape layer, creating multiple instances with customizable transformations. It enables the creation of patterns, grids, and intricate designs by repeating and transforming the shape layers. And when you add a repeater, look at here at the bottom, you can have different copies, it can be offset, and you can also have a transform of the repeater. So let me go ahead and move this layer here to the top left. And now I'm going to change how many copies. So I think I want, 7 is good. And now I'm going to change the transform. I can animate this. Look at this. I can animate the position of the copies so that it starts at 0. And you're not going to see any copies because everything is at 0, right? Everything, they're one on top of each other. Now I'm going to move to about 4 seconds, and I'm going to change the position to maybe yay. Maybe a little bit more, maybe to that. Right? So not too bad. I can change the scale of the repeater, right? So I'm going to navigate in between my keyframes like yay. Do you see how the original is still the same size, and as they duplicate, they're going to become smaller? I can change the rotation. Look at that. This is so cool, it's not even funny. And I can also change the start and the end opacity. I'm going to change the end opacity to about yay. And in fact, I think I want more copies, maybe 12. And I'm going to change the position, to about yay, because I want these to just, that's pretty good. And scale, maybe not so much, maybe yay. You know what, they can become bigger. And now we have all of this smoosh of these flowers, right? Ain't that cool? I mean, look at that. That's like the coolest thing ever. And you could keep on going and going. Like you can move all of these so that the animation is actually longer. It's closer to the 30 seconds, you know? And it starts becoming really cool. And you can even start with the copies, the end opacity being a little bit less so that that composite starts from the beginning. Look at that. Add a little motion blur to that. That's what I'm talking about. Alrighty. So this is all pretty cool. So let's go ahead and go on. You can now even change the transform of the polystar. So for example, I can change the rotation so that it goes around, say, 3 times. And now with the repeater, which is rotating itself, the flowers are also repeating. And, you know, one of the good things is that you can add another repeater. So let me just go back to the beginning and let me add another repeater here, right? So I have repeater 1 and repeater 2. The copies are going to be 5 copies. Why not? Let me collapse this so I can see this a little bit better. And I'm going to keyframe the position of this repeater as well. I'm just going to press the letter U and let's see. The position of the second repeater is going to go down like yay. And now the rotation and the opacity and the scale of the second repeater can be animated as well. So I'm going to keyframe the scale as well. Look at that. The rotation. I am digging this. And of course, I'm going to have the start and the end opacity change a little bit. And in fact, I'm even going to keyframe the end opacity so that it goes to about yay. And this is what I have now. I mean, I have a composite of all of these flowers that I can really use as backgrounds, as whatever. And in fact, let me go ahead and add some motion blur to this, only so that we can see it even more cooler. You can also mask this to create lower thirds or pillars or whatever. And this is the thing. With shape layers, if you were to select the shape layer and then like mask it, you're actually creating a rectangle, not a mask. So you're really creating another shape inside of the shape layer. So you can mask it one of 2 ways, right? So let me just go to where the animation shows me more flowers, say around here. And do you see these two icons here? This one will create a shape, and if you click here, you create a mask. So you can simply click here and then just click and drag, and you're now creating a mask on that shape layer. Another way of doing this, if you don't want to do it this way, which I don't see why not, but neither here nor there, is that you can pre-compose the layer and then mask it the way that you do it normally. All right, so let's continue. Let me create another composition. So Control or Command N. I'm going to name this one Shapes 3. Yeah, why not? And I'm just going to draw a regular plain vanilla shape. And now let's go to Add. So we were on Repeater before. Let's add round corners. And yes, I get it. You could have rounded the corners here. But what if you create something that is a path, you know, something that is not a shape? For example, if I create the rectangle, I can right-click the rectangle path and convert to Bezier path. You see how now there's no roundness there? Or if I created it that way or with a pen tool or whatever, I can now add the round corners, and there you have it. I can still round the corners. This operator rounds the corners of the shape layer, allowing you to create smoother and more rounded shapes. And like I said, this works with anything. So if I go to the pen tool and I select and, select something like this, for example, I can add the round corners and I can round all of the corners by using this operator. So it's kind of cool. All right, so I'm going to delete that shape and let me just create the other rectangle, very simple rectangle. And now you can go to Trim Paths. And notice how Trim Paths is just going to have these three main properties, which is start, end, and offset. And if you change the start, you keyframe it, it goes like yay. The end, it goes like yay. So the same thing, but the other way. And then if you have, say, just this little triangle here, you can animate the offset like yay. And right now this looks kind of silly because this is simply a rectangle, but it can be with anything, right? So I'm just going to go back to this, the pen tool, and I'm going to go to a solid color, and green is good. And let me just create something, I don't know, weird. Very weird, this kind of weird shape here. I can now add to that the trim paths, and I can animate either the start or the end. It doesn't really matter, and it's going to look like it's drawing, right? So from the first vertex, remember the first vertex? And remember how you can actually select one of these paths. So go to Path, click on the word path, select just one. See how you can select just that one. And then you can go to Layer, Mask and Shape Path, Set First Vertex. Look what happens now if you go to Trim Paths, it goes from there, right? And I can just animate this like yay. And that's kind of cool. Twist, zigzag, and wiggle transform. These operators enable dynamic transformations to shape layers. Twist rotates the shape layer around its anchor point. Zigzag adds jagged edges to the shape, and wiggle transform introduces controlled randomness to the shape's position, scale, and rotation. I'm just going to draw the plain vanilla rectangle here, and now let's add the twist. And how the twist works is pretty self-explanatory. You know, you can also change the center of where the twist is, you know, and let's imagine we were doing this to the flower, right? And again, I'm going to center that anchor point, and I'm going to add pucker and bloat. Right? I'm not going to add the repeater, but the pucker and bloat was kind of cool. And oh yeah, I really like that, right? And maybe now I want to add to that the twist, right? I mean, it's kind of cool to just add a little bit of fluidity and motion with that. I mean, ain't that cool? I mean, I can rotate this, I can change the fill, add the stroke, all of that. I can animate it. It's kind of cool. I'm digging it. All right, so let me just add a stroke to this now, and a solid stroke is good. And oops, it helps if I have the layer selected. Solid stroke, there you go. And just so that we can see this a little bit better. And with the shape layer selected, I'm going to add a wiggle paths. Wiggle paths. Wiggle paths adds controlled randomness to the shape layer's path, creating organic and dynamic animations. It introduces variations to the position and shape of the paths over time. You can see here how now this is, I can change the size to something ridiculous like that, right? I can change the detail to something a little bit less ridiculous, so less detail. I can change the points from corner to smooth. And in fact, just to show you that a little bit better, let me delete that. All right, so I deleted the flower, and now I'm just going to draw a plain vanilla rectangle here. Now I can add the wiggle paths, and you can see them a little bit better. And I'm going to change the size just so that you can see them. And the detail, see it? And of course, instead of corner, let's have them be smooth. See how now it looks more like soft corners and all of that. I can have the wiggles per second, correlation, temporal phase, random seed, because this is already animating, right? So if that's too fast, change the wiggles per second to say 0.5. And now it's going to wiggle a heck of a lot less. And you can also keyframe the scale, the size, the details, and all of that sort of thing. So we can keyframe these two here until they go to about yay. And then if you play it back, it just starts going like that smoothly, right? Alrighty, so let me go ahead and delete the wiggle paths, and let's add the wiggle transform. And this is just like any other wiggle. This is going to wiggle the position, scale, rotation, whatever you tell it to, the scale, and of course rotation, and it's just going to do it automatically. So this would be the equivalent of adding a wiggle expression to all of these transform properties. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the wiggle transform. And let's go to the last one of these operators. Let's go to ZigZag. And this does a lot of the same thing as the wiggle paths did, except it doesn't wiggle, right? I mean, you can make it wiggle, but by default, it doesn't wiggle. So you can have corners, or you can have it smooth. And you see that you can transform these shapes kind of on a lot of cool things. Alrighty, so here we go. If you select Bezier path and you just click and drag, you are indeed just doing a path. Notice that there is no rounded corners or anything like that. So you have this option to select this before you even draw the shape. And there you have it, my fellow creators. We have reached the end of our journey into the captivating world of shape layers in After Effects. I hope this comprehensive tutorial has empowered you with the knowledge and skills to take your motion graphics and visual effects to new heights. Remember, shape layers are your artistic playground, where you can shape your ideas into reality. So go forth and experiment, push the boundaries, and unleash your creativity. Let shape layers be the cornerstone of your After Effects projects. I want to thank you all for joining me on this incredible learning adventure. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more exciting After Effects tutorials and tips and tricks. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the latest content. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I'm always here to support you on your creative journey. And don't forget to share this video with your fellow creators who might find it valuable. Together, we can inspire and elevate the motion graphics community. Thank you.